The cold bit into his skin like tiny blades. Callan stumbled out of the wrecked escape pod, his breath forming thick clouds in the air. Snow swirled around him, and the wind howled like a living thing. His clothes were torn from the crash. One boot was missing, and his jacket hung in pieces. All he had was a thermal belt, damaged and blinking red, and a small survival pack. He didn't know what planet this was. The last thing he remembered was the alarm going off on the transport ship, then flames, then blackness. Now all he knew was this place was deadly cold. He limped forward, looking for shelter. The landscape was white, endless, and empty. Ice-covered rocks jutted out of the snow like broken teeth. The sky above was a dull gray, with two faint moons barely visible through the clouds. Callan's fingers were already going numb. "I have to move," he muttered to himself. "Can't stop. If I stop, I die." His words were almost lost in the wind. He walked for what felt like hours. His vision blurred. His legs grew heavy. The cold wasn't painful anymore. That scared him. Then, a shape. At first, he thought it was a rock, but it moved. It was tall, slim, and walking toward him without hesitation. As it came closer, he saw skin that shimmered like soft metal, silver with a bluish tint. Long white hair flowed behind the figure, moving with the wind. She wore nothing except a thin cloth around her hips and chest, but she didn't shiver. Her ears were pointed and small, almost like a human's, but a little sharper. Her eyes were large and glowing pale violet. She tilted her head as she looked at him. Callan blinked. Am I seeing things?" She stepped closer. Her voice was soft, but it reached him clearly, like the wind carried it on purpose. "You will freeze, human," she said. "Come. No clothes? No problem. I will keep you warm." He tried to speak, but his teeth were chattering too hard. He fell to one knee. The alien woman moved quickly. She knelt beside him and placed one hand on his chest. Her touch was warm, strangely warm, like sunlight on skin. He looked into her eyes, and for a moment, the fear faded. She lifted him easily, as if he weighed nothing. He expected cold, hard skin, but her body felt alive, like touching heated silk. "I don't understand," he whispered. "You don't need to," she said. She carried him across the ice, her feet silent in the snow. Callan's mind drifted in and out. He thought of Earth, of his crew. Were they alive? Had anyone else made it? Then he saw it, an opening in the rock ahead, a cave. Faint light spilled out from within, glowing with a soft, natural orange hue. She stepped inside. The cave was warm. Not just warmer than outside, truly warm. Steam drifted from small pools of water, heated by the rocks. Strange crystals on the walls gave off a natural light, soft and peaceful. She laid him down gently on a smooth stone bed near a steam pool. "Rest," she said. "The storm will last until sunrise." "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes softened. "Because I was alone once, and someone helped me." He didn't know what to say. He looked down at his body. His fingers were turning blue. She noticed too. Without hesitation, she lay beside him and wrapped her arms around him. Her body was warm. More than that, it radiated heat like a living fire. "This is how my people survive," she explained. "We share heat. It's not strange to us." Callan tried to relax. He felt warmth returning to his limbs. His heartbeat slowed to a normal rhythm. He could breathe again. "What's your name?" he asked. She paused. "Vyra." "Vyra. I'm Callan. Thank you." She gave a small smile. "You are welcome, Callan." "Ifference." Vyra's eyes met his, her face unreadable. "We will try." The simple certainty in her voice made him believe. It wasn't a confident boast. It was the quiet assurance of someone who had faced hardship before and survived. Vera had lived in exile for years. She knew how to fight back, not with brute force, but with cleverness and patience. This was her world. She was the expert. He was just the human who had fallen into her path. "All right," Callan said, nodding as he took a deep breath. "So how do we get close enough to disable these drones without getting ourselves caught?" Vaira gestured toward the entrance of the cave. "We need to create a distraction, something that will draw their attention away from us." "And what would that be?" Callan asked, skeptical. "Follow me," she replied. They moved swiftly and quietly through the cave, toward a narrow tunnel that Callan hadn't noticed before. Vera led the way, her movements graceful, her senses sharp. As they navigated through the winding passages, Callan began to realize just how well she knew this place. She was a master of her environment, and that gave him hope. After several minutes, they arrived at a small ledge overlooking the area outside the cave. The snow had settled, and the storm had passed, but the sky was still clouded, casting everything in shadow. Below, they could see the drone, a small, black, sleek machine hovering near the wreckage of Callan's crash site. It was scanning the area, its sensors sweeping from side to side. Vaira crouched low. "There are more nearby. We'll need to act quickly." Callan watched the drone for a moment, his mind racing. He had no weapons, no tech of his own, but he had been a technician, a problem solver. His mind worked through every possibility, every angle. There had to be a way to do this. "What if we use the beacon?" he asked. "I mean, it's still sending out a signal. What if we trick the drones into thinking it's a new crash site? Maybe they'll focus on that." Vaira raised an eyebrow. "That could work, but it's risky. The signal isn't strong enough to fool them for long." "It doesn't have to last long," Callan said. "Just long enough for us to get close enough to disable the drones with the disruptor." Vaira paused, considering his plan. Then she nodded. "All right, let's try it." Callan smiled, feeling the surge of confidence that came with taking action. He quickly pulled out the small emergency beacon from his pack and activated it, directing the signal towards the crash site. The light flickered, casting an eerie glow across the snowy landscape. "Now we wait," Callan said, his heart pounding in his chest. The drone outside remained motionless for a few moments, then slowly began to move toward the beacon. It hovered, circling it, its sensors scanning. Just as they had hoped, the distraction worked. The drone was focused on the signal. Vaira looked at Callan, her eyes filled with determination. "Now, move quickly." They crept out of the tunnel, staying low. The snow crunched softly beneath their feet, but they didn't stop. They moved as quickly and quietly as possible, using the natural cover of the terrain to stay hidden. The drone was still occupied with the beacon, and they had only a short window to make it work. When they were close enough, Vera motioned for Callan to stop. They were within striking distance now. The disruptor in Vera's hand hummed with power. Callan could feel the tension in the air. "Are you ready?" she whispered. He nodded. "Let's do it." With a swift motion, Vera activated the disruptor. A pulse of energy shot out, striking the drone with a sharp crack. The drone jerked in the air, its sensors flickering. It hovered for a moment, confused, and then began to spiral down toward the snow. It crashed to the ground with a soft thud. "That worked," Callan said, surprised. "You did it." Vera nodded, her expression calm but pleased. One down. More to go. They quickly moved to the fallen drone, checking for any remaining signs of life. Callan was surprised at how easily the machine had been disabled. It felt like they had just won a small victory. But he knew this wasn't over. The Sky Lords would send more drones. They couldn't rest yet. "We need to find shelter again," Vera said. "They will send more. But we've bought ourselves time." Callan looked at the destroyed drone. "And I think we've got a chance. You and me. We've got a chance to make it out of this." The victory over the drone had been a small one, but it gave Callan and Vera a fleeting sense of hope. They knew it wouldn't be enough. The Sky Lords had far more advanced technology than the small device they had just used to disable the first drone. They had to keep moving. He nodded, following her as she led the way to the ship. She quickly accessed the controls, and the hatch opened with a soft hiss. The interior of the ship was warm, the contrast from the icy mountain air almost too much to bear. Callan stepped inside, taking in the strange, sleek design of the vessel. It was unlike anything he had seen before, a true alien technology. Vera moved to the control panel and began activating the ship's systems. "This will take us out of the atmosphere," she said, her fingers flying over the controls with practiced ease. "Once we're in orbit, we'll be safe." For a while, Callan watched her, impressed by how natural she seemed in the captain's seat. He had no idea how she had learned all this, but it was clear that she was more than capable. He felt a sense of awe. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about something more: trust, partnership, and the strange bond that had formed between them. He walked over to her, standing at the controls. "You're amazing," he said quietly, his voice filled with genuine admiration. Vera glanced up at him, her expression softening. "I'm just doing what needs to be done." Callan smiled, a flicker of warmth spreading through him. He didn't have the words to describe how grateful he was for her. He had come here by accident, a crash survivor, lost in an alien world. But now he was here with her, fighting for survival, working together to escape the danger that had hunted her for so long. The ship's engines hummed to life, and the low rumble vibrated through the floor. The lights flickered on, casting a soft glow across the small interior. The ship was ready to take off. Vyra looked at him one last time before turning back to the controls. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice steady. Callan's heart raced, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from something else, a strange mix of excitement and relief. They were escaping. Together. He nodded. "Yeah, let's go." The ship lifted off the ground, rising slowly at first, then picking up speed as it broke free from the mountain's grip. The cold, harsh winds of the planet seemed to fade away as the ship ascended, the stars growing clearer and more beautiful the higher they went. As they left the atmosphere, Vera's tense posture relaxed. She exhaled a breath Callan hadn't even realized she'd been holding. The ship glided smoothly through the void of space, its course set. For the first time since they'd met, Vera allowed herself a small smile. "We made it." Callan leaned back in his seat, watching the stars outside the window. "We did," he said softly. They were far from safe. The Sky Lords would come after them. But for now, in this moment, they had something more valuable than survival. They had each other. And that made all the difference, in what they had just done. The feeling of victory was still fresh, but the danger wasn't over. The Sky Lords would find a way to restore their systems. They had to act quickly. Vyra's eyes glinted with determination as she turned toward the door. "We have no time to waste. They will try to fix their network soon." Callan nodded and followed her out. They moved quickly, retracing their steps back into the snowy night. The cold wind bit at their skin, but it was nothing compared to the fire they'd just ignited in their hearts. They couldn't afford to rest. Not yet. Every moment felt like a countdown. The drones had been disabled, but the Sky Lord's search was far from over. "Where do we go now?" Callan asked, his breath visible in the air. "To my ship," Vera replied. "It's hidden in the mountains. It's the only way we can escape." With no more words, they ran through the snow, the bright moon above guiding their path. The cold had never felt so alive, as if every step brought them closer to the end of their long journey. When they reached the base of the mountain, Vera led him up a narrow path. Their pace slowed, but there was a shared understanding between them. They had come this far. They could make it the rest of the way. At the summit, hidden behind rocks and ice, lay Vera's ship. It wasn't large, but it was enough. She turned to Callan, her eyes full of something more than just determination. There was a spark there, something that had grown between them over the past days. She stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "We made it," she whispered. "We survived." Callan looked at her, the warmth of the moment flooding his chest. The world around them was cold, but in that moment, standing beside her, he knew he had found something far warmer than any fire. He smiled. "Yeah, we did." They entered the ship together, and as the engines hummed to life, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter. And no matter what happened next, Callan knew one thing for sure. He was no longer alone in the cold universe. The control center had been silent for hours. Callan and Vera moved swiftly, slipping through the shadows to avoid any remaining guards or drones. Their mission was far from over. The small victory of disabling the Skylord's drones felt fleeting. The real challenge was escaping before the Skylords could retaliate. They didn't talk much during their trek back through the cold, their breath visible in the frosty air. The mountains loomed in the distance, where Vera's ship was hidden. Each step brought them closer to the escape they so desperately needed. "Do you think they'll catch us?" Callan asked quietly, his voice barely rising above the sound of their footsteps crunching on the snow. Vera didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were focused ahead, always scanning their surroundings. "I won't let them," she said, her tone calm but firm. Callan nodded, trusting her. He had to. He didn't know this world, but she did. She had been running from the Skylords for years. If there was anyone who knew how to survive, it was her. After what felt like an eternity, they'd reached the narrow path leading up to the hidden location of her ship. The mountain winds howled, sending sharp gusts of cold air against their faces. Callan pulled his jacket tighter around him, but the cold seemed to seep through no matter how hard he tried to shield himself. Vera moved ahead, effortlessly navigating the steep, rocky terrain. Her strength was incredible, and Callan couldn't help but admire her. She was a warrior in her own right, someone who had fought for survival far longer than he had. "How much farther?" Callan asked, trying to keep up. "Not much," she replied, her voice steady as she glanced over her shoulder to check on him. "We're close now." They finally reached the top of a cliff, where a small, sleek spacecraft sat nestled against the mountain. It was well hidden among the jagged rocks, camouflaged perfectly against the dark landscape. Even in the dim light of the moons, the ship gleamed, its smooth surface reflecting the faint glow of the sky. Callan couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over him. They had made it. For now, at least. Vera turned to face him. "We're not safe yet," she said, her expression serious. "We need to get inside and leave quickly. Once the Skylords realize we've disabled their drones, they'll send more." Something shared. Callan opened his eyes slowly. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then he felt the warmth, the soft light of the glowing crystals above, and the sound of steam gently rising from nearby pools. He wasn't cold anymore. He was alive. And he wasn't alone. Vera, the alien woman, sat a few feet away, watching him quietly. She still wore only her thin wrap, but she didn't seem to feel the cold at all. Her silvery blue skin caught the light in a soft, natural way, almost like moonlight on water. Callan sat up slowly. His muscles ached, but the warmth had brought strength back into his body. "You're awake," Vera said. He nodded. "Thanks to you." "You were nearly frozen when I found you," she replied. "I'm surprised you walked that far in this cold." "I didn't have a choice," Callan said, rubbing his hands together. "It was survive or freeze." Vera looked thoughtful. "Humans are stronger than I expected." Callan gave a small laugh. "We don't always look tough, but we try." Vera stood and walked toward the back of the cave. Callan noticed that the heat seemed stronger near the walls. "This place," she said, touching the stone, "was once a resting chamber for travelers, but now only I live here." He tilted his head. "Why are you here all alone?" She paused before answering. "I was exiled. My people did not agree with me. Exiled? Kalen asked, surprised. What did you do? I spoke out against our war leaders, she said. They want to fight and conquer. I want peace. I was told I would only bring weakness to our kind. So, I was left here. Kalen was quiet for a moment. He understood how it felt to be cast aside. I think you were brave, he finally said. Vyra looked at him with a mix of surprise and something softer. Thank you. No one has said that before. He slowly stood up and walked around the cave. So this heat, it's from the rocks. She nodded. This planet has energy beneath its surface, hot rivers of minerals. The warmth comes through the stones. That's amazing, Kalen said. Earth doesn't have anything like this. At least, not in the open. You may stay here as long as you need, Vera offered. It is safe from storms. And from others. Kalen looked around again. For the first time since the crash, he felt like he had a chance to survive. Thank you, he said. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found me. Vyra walked back to him. You still need rest. Your body is healing. Kalen smiled. You sound like a doctor. I have learned many things to survive, she replied. They both sat near the heat pool, the steam curling around them softly. It was quiet, peaceful. After a moment, Kalen looked at her. Why did you help me, really? Vyra looked at him, calm and steady. Because I still believe in kindness, even if others have forgotten it. He nodded slowly. I think more people need to think like you. They sat in silence for a while, just listening to the soft sound of water and stone. Kalen felt something strange growing in his chest. Not fear, not worry, but a quiet sense of connection. I should try to fix my communicator, he said at last. Maybe someone is still out there. Maybe a rescue team. Vera stood and offered her hand to help him up. Then tomorrow, we will go back to your crash site together. But for now, stay warm. Kalen smiled as he took her hand. With you around, I think I'll be okay. Vyra gave a small nod and walked to the far side of the cave, placing her hand gently on the crystal wall. The light there grew a little brighter. As Kalen lay back down on the warm stone, watching her, he couldn't help but wonder, was this the start of survival, or something far more unexpected? The days that followed felt like a strange, quiet dream. The beacon had sent a signal, but no reply had come. Kalen kept hoping that someone, anyone, would respond. But as each day passed, his thoughts turned more to survival. The icy winds had quieted, but that didn't mean they were safe. Vyra had been right. They were being watched. She kept a sharp eye on the skies, alert for any sign of the Sky Lords. And Kalen, despite his lingering hope, had begun to accept the reality that they were no longer alone in this frozen world. One morning, Vera's warning came early. Stay low, she said, her voice calm but urgent. There is a patrol above us. We need to move quickly. Kalen nodded, his heart skipping a beat. How do you know? I've lived with these skies long enough to understand their patterns, Vera replied, leading him down into the lower caves. We can't outrun them, but we can hide. Vera led them back to the caves, where they would rest for a moment and plan their next move. The once peaceful cave now felt like a battleground, with every passing moment thick with tension. The cold outside seemed to creep into their bones, but inside the cave there was warmth, both from the natural heat of the stone and the unspoken bond growing between them. Once inside, Kalen placed the disruptor down on the stone table Vyra had set up for their supplies. It was small, fragile-looking, yet powerful in its own right. They had one chance to use it again, but it wasn't going to be enough if they couldn't find a way to stop the Sky Lord's drones permanently. What's the next move? Kalen asked, staring at the device. Vyra knelt beside it, inspecting it closely. We need to get to their control center. There's a way to send out a signal that will confuse their drones. It's a risky plan, but it could disable their network. Kalen's heart skipped a beat. A control center. Where is it? It's not far from here, she replied, her tone quiet, but firm. But it's heavily guarded. I'll need to get in there and connect the disruptor to their network. And how do we do that without getting caught? Callan asked, his voice tight with concern. The stakes had just gotten much higher. Vira's eyes met his. We'll have to move quickly and carefully. If we make it to the control center, we can disable their network long enough to buy us time. Callan rubbed his forehead, trying to wrap his mind around the plan. It sounded dangerous, too dangerous, but there was no other choice. He looked up at Vira. I'm with you, but we need to make sure we're ready. If we're going to do this, it has to be perfect. Vira's expression softened slightly, though her eyes remained focused. We'll do it together. The next few hours were spent preparing. They gathered their few remaining supplies, double-checked the disruptor, and mapped out their route. Vira spoke very little during this time, and Callan followed her lead, trying to stay calm. There was an energy between them, a shared understanding. They were no longer just two strangers thrown together by fate. They were partners now, bound by the need to survive. As night fell, they set out, moving quickly and silently through the snow-covered landscape. The moonlight cast long shadows on the ground, and the temperature had dropped again, but the warmth of their shared purpose kept them going. Every step they took was a step closer to their goal. By the time they reached the outskirts of the control center, Callan's breath was coming in ragged gasps. The facility was massive, surrounded by tall, barbed fences and guarded by several drones. It was everything Callan had feared it would be, and more. We'll need to be invisible, Vira said softly, as they crouched behind a large rock formation just outside the perimeter. Callan nodded. Right. So how do we get past these guards? Vira's eyes scanned the area. I know a path. Follow me and stay close. They moved carefully, hugging the shadows and avoiding the drone's patrols. The cold night air seemed to grow colder as they neared the entrance to the control center. Callan's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't dare speak. Every movement felt like it could be their last. When they finally reached the door, Vira pressed her hand to a hidden panel on the side of the building. A soft hiss of air followed, and the door slid open with barely a sound. They slipped inside, into the warmth of the control center. The room was filled with alien technology. Screens flickered, and the hum of machines filled the air. Vira moved swiftly, making her way to the central console. Callan stayed close, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of danger. I'll connect the disruptor to their system, Vira said, her voice barely above a whisper. Keep an eye out. As she worked, Callan's mind raced. This was their moment. If they failed now, it would be over. But if they succeeded, they could turn the tide. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him, and he didn't know if he was ready for it. But then he remembered why he was here. Not just to survive, but to stand beside someone who had given him a second chance. Someone who had chosen to help him, even when there was no reason to. Done, Vira whispered, pulling him out of his thoughts. She stepped back from the console, a small smile on her face. The lights in the control center flickered and then went dark. The hum of the machines stopped. They'll be confused, she said. We've bought ourselves some time. Part 7. Warmth Beyond Flesh. The silence in the control center was deafening. Callan stood frozen for a moment, taken. Outside, the storm howled on, but inside the cave, wrapped in the arms of an alien woman, Callan felt something he never expected to feel here. Safe. The next morning, a soft hum echoed through the cave as light filtered in from the entrance. The storm outside had passed, leaving a thick blanket of snow over the frozen world. Inside the cave, warmth still filled the air like a quiet promise of safety. Callan stretched his arms and sat up. His muscles felt stronger. His hands weren't numb anymore. He turned and saw Vira sitting near the steam pool, her eyes closed, meditating in silence. She looked peaceful, calm, a strange contrast to the wild world outside. Callan stood and walked over. You meditate every morning. Vera opened her eyes slowly. It helps me stay balanced. The cold can reach the body, but I won't let it reach my mind. Callan smiled. Smart. I just try not to fall on my face. She gave a small laugh. It was the first time he had heard it. Soft, like wind through leaves. I think we're very different, he said. We are, she agreed. But maybe not in every way. They shared a quiet moment, then began preparing to travel. Callan's crash site wasn't far, but they had to move carefully. The snow was deep, and hidden ice could break underfoot. Vera moved like she belonged to the land, her steps light and silent. Callan followed, slower but determined. When they reached the crash site, Callan felt his chest tighten. The wreckage looked worse than he remembered. Burnt metal, twisted frames, and blackened snow surrounded the ruined pod. He stepped inside, brushing snow off the emergency console. I need the survival beacon, he said. If I can fix it, maybe it can send a signal. Vera stayed near the entrance, her eyes scanning the horizon. We must be quick. This place feels watched. Callan worked fast. He found the beacon, damaged but still intact. Its power source was weak, but he had an idea. If I borrow some of the energy from my broken thermal belt, I might be able to power it long enough for a signal burst. Vera walked over and knelt beside him. Let me help. Together, they connected the wires and reattached parts. Her fingers were delicate but skilled. Callan guided her through the human tech, and she showed him how to balance the energy output using a strange crystal she carried. I didn't expect you to understand this stuff, he said. I had to learn, she replied. When you're alone, you either learn or perish. They finished the repairs and stepped back. Callan pressed the button. The beacon blinked, a slow, pulsing light. It's working, he said, almost in disbelief. Good, Vera said. But now we wait. And hope. Just then, a soft rumble came from the distance. Not thunder. Not wind. Callan looked up. What was that? Vera stood, her expression serious. A drone. He frowned. One of yours. She shook her head. No. One of theirs. Callan grabbed the beacon and followed Vera as they quickly left the crash site. They moved fast across the snow, heading back toward the cave. But the sound behind them grew louder, a deep hum, steady and sharp. Suddenly, a shadow passed overhead. A small flying machine, smooth and black, glided through the air above them. It circled once before disappearing into the clouds. They saw us, Callan said. Yes, Vera said softly. We're not safe anymore. Back inside the cave, Callan paced nervously. Who are they? Vera sat down, her eyes thoughtful. Sky Lords, the rulers of my world. They send machines to find exiles and destroy them before they spread their ideas. But why? Just because you wanted peace. They believe peace makes us weak, she said. But I believe peace makes us strong. Callan sat beside her. And now they saw me too. She looked at him. I'm sorry, Callan. You are in danger because of me. He shook his head. No, you saved my life. I'm not leaving you now. Vera stared at him, surprised. You would stay, even with the danger. I'm human, Callan said with a small grin. We're stubborn like that. She smiled, gently, like she wasn't used to anyone standing beside her. For a moment, the cold world outside didn't matter. In that warm cave, surrounded by stone and steam, something had begun between them. Not just survival, not just warmth. Something real, something human, something alien. They crawled through narrow passages, avoiding the sunlight filtering through the cave entrance. The air was thick with tension, but there was something in the way Vera moved that kept him calm. She was strong, stronger than anyone he'd known. And right now, her strength was exactly what they needed. They came to a hidden chamber deep inside the cave, surrounded by thick walls of stone. The air was warmer here, heated by the mineral veins running through the earth. Callan sat down, taking a deep breath. What happens now? Vera kneeled beside him, her sharp eyes scanning the dark passageways. Now, we wait. The sound of the patrol overhead grew fainter, but they didn't move. Time passed slowly. Vera didn't speak. She just sat, focused and still. You don't talk much, do you? Callan finally asked, breaking the silence. Vera gave him a small smile, though her eyes were still on alert. I talk when it's necessary. I prefer listening. Callan chuckled softly. I guess I do most of the talking, then. Vera's smile widened just a little. I have noticed. They shared a quiet moment. The fear of being found was still there, but somehow, in that small, hidden chamber, it felt distant. They were safe, at least for now. Eventually, the silence stretched too long. Callan stood and started pacing. Are they always this relentless? He asked. I mean, you said they were looking for you, but how long have you been hiding? Vera's expression turned somber. I've been running for years. After I spoke out against them, I was marked as a traitor. Exiles like me are hunted down, and anyone who helps us is considered a threat. That's brutal, Callan said, shaking his head. And they just keep sending drones after you. Why not just come down here and deal with you directly? Vera looked at him. The Sky Lords prefer to keep their hands clean. They want to make an example of me, but they don't want to dirty themselves with actual combat. So they send machines instead, Callan said, his mind racing. I guess that makes sense. But I'm not just some passerby. I'm involved now, too. She nodded. Yes. And now, they will want to catch us both. Callan looked out at the dark, winding path ahead. I won't leave you. Not after what you've done for me. Vera met his gaze. You would stay, even though I am hunted. He nodded firmly. Yes, you saved my life. I'm not about to turn my back on you now. She seemed surprised by his answer, her eyes softening for a moment before she turned back toward the cave entrance. The drones will come back soon. We have no choice but to fight back. Callan wasn't sure how to fight against machines, especially not ones built by alien rulers. But Vera didn't seem worried. She had a plan. We'll need to disable the drones if we can, she said. I know their weak points. Callan raised an eyebrow. You're telling me you've fought them before? Not exactly, she said. But I've learned their patterns. I can predict where they'll strike. He looked at her, impressed. Okay, what do we need to do? Vera stood and walked toward a pile of supplies they'd gathered over the past few days. She picked up a piece of alien technology, something that looked like a small device wrapped in silver wires. It was a disruptor, something she had scavenged from her previous hiding spots. This, she said, holding it up, will block their sensors for a short time. But we need to get close enough to the drones to use it. Sounds dangerous, Callan muttered. Very, she agreed. But it's our best chance. Callan nodded. He had no other choice but to trust her. He had come this far, and with Vera by his side, he was ready to do whatever it took to survive. The tension in the cave was thick, like the air just before a storm. Callan paced back and forth, the soft glow of the crystals lighting his every step. Vera had said they had a chance, but everything about the situation felt uncertain. They were up against machines, drones sent by the Sky Lords, a relentless force designed to track and capture her. Yet here they were, trying to fight back with nothing but a small alien disruptor and their wits. Do you think we can really do this? Callan asked, trying to calm the unease in his chest. He looked at the disruptor in Vera's hand. It looked fragile, but he knew better than to judge by appearances. His training back on Earth had taught him that sometimes the smallest devices could make the biggest